All right. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. I hear a lot of friendly chatter going on, which is a good thing. All right. Did everybody get a handout? All right. Everybody's got a handout? All right. We're also going to put the slides up on the screen. I know where people are sitting. Not everybody will be able to see them. So that's why the handouts are there. The handouts will also be posted on the website after we're done, so you can, so you'll be able to review that later. But first of all, thank you everybody for coming. It's great to see all of you. It's a terrific turnout. I wasn't quite certain about Meatloaf, but Dave, right? But Dave knows best. And he told me that was going to be a hit, and I can't tell you, I think 10 people probably told me they were coming just better than Meatloaf. 11.
I'll take that.
Okay. All right, tonight's presentation is a little different than the way the format we used last time. All right, I have a presentation to make based on the analysis I've done of these other associations, which we'll walk through and share. I'd like to ask you, unless the questions are specifically related to what we're looking at, please hold those questions till the end. Okay? If it's clarification or a question about what we're looking at the moment, go ahead and ask those questions, because somebody else probably has the same question. And I will stay as late as I have to go through all questions. If you don't, for some reason, get to all of them, we'll answer them on the website to make sure everybody gets answers to those questions. Okay, does that make sense? Okay. All right, well, first, that's the stack of papers that I've been going through for the last 6 or 7 weeks to consolidate that and turn that all into the presentation you guys have in hand. All right? So, financial statements, articles of incorporation, more financial statements, menus, want ads, job ads, you name it. I've been spending a lot of time looking at other associations to find ones that are like us so that we could kind of benchmark ourselves against them and get a flavor for what they do and what we do, and just give us a benchmark as a foundation for things we could improve, and also identify things that we're doing well, because I think that gives us a great starting place as we go forward and help and prioritize what we want to do as we move ahead. All right, but be glad you didn't have to go through all of these. I'm kind of a nerd, so they're a little interesting, but for most people, not so much. Wow. Already? We didn't even get to the presentation yet. Okay, I'm going to make a couple comments before we jump into the presentation. First of all, in 1970, when our association was founded, there were 10,000 HOAs across the country. Today, there are about 351,000 associations. All right? 45,000 of them just in California. 40 million households presently are a part of an HOA. 40 million, or 70 million people. So roughly 21% of all U.S. residents live in it as part of an HOA. Right? It's kind of interesting. So 53% of owner-occupied homes are part of HOAs. Now, something about HOAs that's interesting is that 70% of them are completely managed by volunteers. And nobody get any ideas. Okay? That's because most of them are fairly small. All right. There are only about 2% of all the associations in the country are considered large associations. Okay. And to be a large association, it's 1,000 units or 1,000 acres, and an annual budget of $2 million. Okay. So 98% of all HOAs are smaller than that. All right? And when we look at the numbers, you'll see that even out of that 2% of large associations, we tend to fall on the far end of the scale. You know, our total operating budget, when you factor in the utility company, the water company, is about $7.5 to $8 million. So about 4 times what it takes to qualify as a large association. Okay. Also, I don't like this part of it very much, but I know a lot of you guys don't know my background. So I thought I'd take a few minutes just to go through some of my experience and some of my education so that you can understand kind of why the numbers make sense. Okay? So the most recent thing that I've done with education as part of the job here is completed the training to be a certified manager of community associations. Okay? So the board required that as part of being hired, but I think it was a great idea. And I think the association should always have somebody that is familiar with the details and the specifics of running and operating an association. Now, for me, most of it, I'll be quite honest with you, was review based on my previous experience, but there's also specific gems and important pieces of information about how associations operate, because they're pretty unique pieces. So I hope I'm here for a long time, but if I'm not, whatever comes next, you should do the same thing with it. All right. I founded a technology and business consulting company in 2000. I operated that for 10 years. So I have experience with business startups, with fundraising that was financed by outside investors. And so after that, for 5 years, I trained other businesses how to run and operate more efficiently. Okay, so that really is the core of my background, is how do you use technology and business processes to efficiently and economically operate. All right, so that's one of the focuses that I've had here as I'm looking through our budgets, and as I'm looking through our operations, and as I'm looking through our technology. How do we use that to be as smart and as efficient as we can with the money that we do have? All right, because if we can find more money in our existing budget, great. If we can do more with our existing budget, great. That's what we should do. We should always be as efficient and responsible with those dollars as we can. Because those dollars come out of your pocket, they come out of my pocket, and I take that very seriously. All right? But that really, for 15 years of my professional career, that is what I focused on specifically. I also worked for about 5 years, actually almost exactly 5 years, in the insurance industry, which actually comes in handy when it comes to operating an HOA, because insurance is an important component. I've already had one question tonight that we'll get to that's related to insurance issues. My educational background, I have a Bachelor's of Science in Cybernetics from UCLA. Okay, now it's not Dianetics, it's not L. Ron Hubbard. What cybernetics is a study of systems control and communications theory. It's basically doing computer modeling of biological systems, electrical systems, and I took electrical engineering classes, I took computer science classes. I actually started out, of all things, as a physics, English double major. So I don't know that I've ever met anybody else who started out that way. Yeah, well, we're still working on that. But after that, I went, and when I started with my company in 2000, I actually went back to UCLA and enrolled in their MBA program. Okay, so I graduated in 2003 with my MBA from UCLA. So I have both practical experience and I have formal training, all right, which comes in handy when we're looking at all of these different financial statements and doing financial forecasts and evaluating, how do you compare the 4 different associations that we're going to look at tonight when we don't keep our books all exactly the same. So one of the things I have to do in that analysis is do an apples-to-apples comparison. And so I have to adjust certain numbers, not change them, but move the categories. Then we have to look at what amenities another association has that we don't have. We have to take those numbers out when we do a comparison. And then we have to look at the pieces that we have that they don't have so that we can do a fair comparison. Okay? And that's why it takes a lot of time and a lot of paper to go through all of that, because in order to get legitimate, valid numbers to inform us about how we actually compare, we have to do all of that kind of analysis. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. So, let's move on from there. Let me tell you about the associations we're going to talk about tonight. First is us. What, nothing? All right. Okay. Second is Bear Valley Springs. Bear Valley Springs was founded the same year we were, in 1970, and they are located outside of Tehachapi. Okay? The third one we're going to talk about is Pine Mountain Lake. Some of you may have, I know some of you guys have been there before. We actually get their newspaper and keep us updated on the financials and what's going on in their organization, something that we watch on a monthly basis. And then Lake of the Pines. Lake of the Pines was also founded just about the same time we were. They're slightly different from the other associations. The lots are smaller, and the size of their association is smaller in terms of square miles. Okay, so that's something to take into consideration when we look at it. All right. Yeah, I don't think that's wanting to work there, John. Let's see. Okay, that one works. All right. So to give you a flavor for where we're located, you can see we're all pretty much in line in very similar locations. We're all up in the foothills. We're all within a couple hundred miles of each other. Okay, so Lake of the Pines is the farthest north. They're in Nevada County. Pine Mountain Lake is off of 120 on the other side of Yosemite from us. We're here on the south side of Yosemite. And then Bear Valley, like I said, is up near the Tehachapi. Okay? And then in finding associations to compare to, there we go. In finding associations to compare to, we want to take a look at the demographics to see are they really like us or not like us. And were they different? How are they different? All right? So, YLP was founded in 1970. According to the census taken in 2010, our census area of about 4,900 residents. A little bit higher than that now, but 4,900. According to the census map, it encompasses an area of 21 square miles. All right? Which is 13,400 acres. We have 2,253 home sites with about 1,850 of those built out. Okay? We currently have 108 listings of homes for sale. So we're in a pretty active market. It's about 5% of all the homes listed in the park are presently for sale. So that actually is a good thing for the association in that we get to collect a little bit of fees when homes transfer, and it also helps us catch up on anybody that may be behind on paying their dues. So we had one of those happen actually last month that was sold. We hadn't been able to collect their dues for quite a while. We collected $7,000 when that property transferred. Okay, so homes turning over is not it's not a bad. The median price of homes that sold in the last month in the park was $300,000. The median income in this area is $61,000, and the median age is 50. Okay? Now, Bear Valley Springs was also founded in 1970, same year we were.
Excuse me, could you go to the right of the...
Sure, no problem. Actually, let me go this way.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, yeah. So Bear Valley Springs was founded in 1970. They're similar to how we were. There was an old ranch. Somebody acquired that property and turned it into a homeowners association. They are twice the size of us in terms of square miles. Okay, they got 42 square miles, or about 26,000 acres. Okay, they also are larger than us in terms of the total number of homes. They have about 3,580 parcels. Okay, so about 75% bigger than we are. And they have 2,948 homes built on those parcels. They're, I'm gonna have to stay on the left because I can't read it from here. So their number of listings they have is 63. Okay, so not quite as active as our market. Their average sales price for homes is $312,000. Their median income is $83,000. Now, part of that is they're a little closer to Los Angeles, and it's a little bigger community. Median age in that community is 56. So you can see between the two of us, there are a lot of there are more similarities than differences, and we stack up fairly well. Now, Lake of the Pines was first incorporated in 1967. Their population is 3,917, but they're only about 2 square miles. Okay, they're much smaller. They cover a much smaller land area than we do, about 1,152 acres. There are 2,000 home sites. 1,889 homes have been built out. Yeah.
John, I'm sorry to interrupt. All of these figures are based on the 1970, 1970, 1967, or now?
No, that's when they were founded. The numbers for demographics are the population's on 2000, based on 2010, and the sales prices of homes is based on what's happened either within the last month or the last year, depending on what I could find. And same with median income and median age. Okay. So the home price in Lake of the Pines runs quite a bit higher than here. $468,000 is the average selling price for homes in Lake of the Pines. Median income is $82,000. Average age is 65. Okay, so they tend to skew a little bit older and a little bit more economically affluent than the other two associations. Okay, Pine Mountain Lake was founded in 1969.
Question.
Yep.
Would that demographic possibly due to the difference between renters and owners?
It certainly can be. I think I didn't get hard numbers on this because we don't have exact numbers on what the renters are. But we tended to skew younger here in the park over about the last 10 years. When prices came down, we had a lot more families move in. And I think that contributed to the change in demographics. So, they currently have 85 listings at Lake of the Pines, roughly 3,500 home sites. Median income in Lake of the Pines is actually the lowest of the four, at $53,000. The average selling price of homes was $260,000. Median age, Pine Mountain, right? Yeah, Pine Mountain had median age is 61. Okay, so it can be tough to find comparisons for us, again, because there are a few large associations, right? Remember, it's only about 2% of all associations in the country. But finding ones here in California that are similar sizes, with similar amenities, with similar demographics, I think it gives us a very good basis, on which to do an evaluation and a comparison. Okay? Any question about the demographics? Is that okay? All right. Okay, so then we have to take a look. Actually, I want to make one note. Before we move on to that, I want to make one note about Bear Valley Springs. Bear Valley Springs is slightly different than the other associations in terms of how they're funded and how they were structured. So Bear Valley Springs created both a community service district and an HOA at the same time. Okay? So that was pretty smart on their part, because it means that the community service district gets the 1% tax base on property taxes to use to operate a lot of the amenities. Okay? They also happen to own, the community service district actually owns all of the amenities in that HOA. Okay? But they lease them to the HOA for $1 a year, and the HOA maintains them and operates them. Okay, so while they don't own that, it doesn't show up as an asset on their books, they do the same operational things that we do with our amenities. Okay? The other thing that happens with that is because they created essentially, community service district is like a city that's not a city, right? But it's a designated area that operates as a government. They have a separate board from their HOA that sets the rules. They have a separate staff. They operate all of the utilities as well. Okay, so they operate the trash, they operate water, they maintain the roads, they maintain the police force, and they maintain the sewer system. Okay? So, because they're structured that way, their dues don't cover the same thing our dues cover. Instead, they actually pay $495 extra per year in taxes to cover road maintenance and security. Okay, so it's $340 a year over and above their dues to pay for road maintenance. Remember, they have 110 miles, they have their own roads department. And they pay $145 a year per home to fund their sheriff's department. Okay, so that's how they handle security. All right, it actually is pretty clever because they get to take advantage of the tax base that we don't get, right? But that tax base isn't enough to cover everything. Right? There still are things over and above that. They still have HOA fees, they still pay extra taxes. They just go to the community service district instead of the association. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's one of the things that we have to correct for when we do an apples to apples comparison. Okay, in terms of amenities, all of the other communities are gated. We used to be, we're not now. They all have golf courses, okay? Bear Valley Springs has a 9-hole golf course just like we do. Lake of the Pines and Pine Mountain both have full 18-hole golf courses. 3 of us have equestrian centers. Okay? Ours is slightly different than the other 2 that have equestrian centers in that we don't rent out horses at our equestrian center. We just board. Okay, so there's a little difference in that also. All have restaurants. Pretty similar to ours. They have a nice, nice restaurant, a lounge, and a smaller restaurant, kind of like cafe. Okay. They all have pools. They all have tennis and/or pickleball. It's interesting. We have 51 miles of roads. Bear Valley Springs has 110. I estimate Lake of the Pines has about 5 miles of roads. Remember, they cover a lot smaller area than we do. All right. And Pine Mountain Lake has 52 miles of roads. So again, very similar in terms of the amenities. We have trails. Bear Valley Springs has trails. Pine Mountain Lake has trails. Lake of the Pines does not. YLP and Bear Valley Springs do not have marinas. Okay, Lake of the Pines and Pine Mountain Lake both generate revenue. Okay, from having motor boats on their lake. So they charge fees for that. They have docks. And so that's a source of revenue and a source of expense for them. So we'll adjust those out when we get to the comparisons as well. Okay, Bear Valley Springs and Pine Mountain Lake also have a revenue source because they have campgrounds that the public can use. Okay, so they make some small amount of revenue from that. It doesn't end up being that significant. And all four of us have rec centers. Okay, so I think you guys can see between the demographics, between the amenities, between the sizes of the organizations, that we're fairly similar in terms of what we do.
Jonathan,
Yeah.
on their pools, are their pools heated or not heated like us, and you're able to use them year-round?
Yeah, so-
like we aren't able to?
Yep. Some of them are heated. I didn't make a note of that on here, but there is I believe two of them are heated. I think Lake of the Pines and Bear Valley. I think. Yeah.
Is Bear Valley in Tehachapi?
Bear Valley is just outside Tehachapi. Yep.
I don't think that golf course is there anymore.
Yeah, it's still there. It's still there. Yeah. In fact, my sister-in-law was on the board of Bear Valley Springs, and my brother, she got married in their facilities there.
That's the same as
So, okay. So, next part. Now that we've found some associations that are similar to ours, we got to take a look at the financials and break them down. Okay. So what I've done on this chart, on this graph, is show what our receivables are, how much revenue do we generate in various categories, and how much expense do we have in various categories, and what is our net cost in those categories. And I've done that for each of the 4 associations. Okay? So, a couple things that are interesting about this. I'm going to jump to the bottom at first. So our total revenues that we generate from our amenities is about $2 million. Okay? We spend about $4.7 million in expenses, including OSS. Okay, and OSS is a special case for us because none of the other associations own their own utility company. Okay, so that's another thing we're going to have to adjust when we do the apples to apples comparison. But for this part, this shows you where we compare. Right? If we have something and they don't, or they have something and we don't, that's what's here. But in terms of our overall operational expenses, $2 million in revenues, $4.7 million in expenses, which means we have a net of about $2.7 million of operating loss that has to be made up by association dues. Okay? Bear Valley Springs also generates about $2.5 million in revenue. And it's interesting, remember they're 70% bigger than we are, all right? But in terms of revenue, they generate only a small amount more than we do comparatively. Their expenses, on the other hand, are $8.7 million. Okay? We'll get into the breakdown of why their expenses are more than ours on a couple of slides down the road. But one thing to note is that the golf costs for all of these associations is really expensive. Okay? They all now outsource their management, but they spend $500,000 to $800,000 on expenses to maintain their golf courses. Okay? So that's something that jumps out pretty quick when you look at it breaking out the amenities. So they end up needing about $6 million of net operating loss that they have to fund through their association dues. Okay? And this includes an adjustment. This chart includes the adjustment for their extra taxes that they pay for roads and for security. Again, to even it up. Yeah.
What is F&B?
Food and beverage. Food and beverage. Okay. So Lake of the Pines, right? We total that up. They're at $2.7 million in revenue, $6.2 million in expenses, with about $3.4 million in net operating loss there. Okay. And Pine Mountain Lake, is similar in that. I'll just read off the sheet so I can actually see it and not block everybody. All right. So Pine Mountain Lake does, about $2 million in revenue. I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong page. Yeah. That's the one I want. Yeah. Okay, so Pine Mountain Lake does about $3 million in total revenue. They do about $9.2 million in total expenses, and so they need to fund about $6.2 million in through homeowners association dues. Okay. Now, one thing that's a little tough in doing these kinds of comparisons is we can't just look at the numbers, right? Because we have different amounts of lots. So I wanted to break it down by the number of lots we have, so that we could, so we could see how that, relates. Let me. Okay, so if you look at that, we actually generate about $894 per parcel in revenue. All right, where Bear Valley Springs generates $720. So we actually generate more revenue in our amenities than Bear Valley Springs does, and that even includes their golf course, which is a big money generator for them. Now, Lake of the Pines generates $1,384 of revenue per parcel. Okay? There are two big reasons for this. The biggest reason is that they have their marina, which generates a profit for them. I mean, they actually operate at a profit with their lake. Okay? You can see they generate $254,000 of revenue from that lake, which we don't have. They also generate $661,000 a year from golf fees and golf dues, okay, which is substantially more than we generate. But you'll see that Pine Mountain Lake generates $874 in revenue per parcel. So when you look at that, in terms of the revenue we generate per parcel, we're kind of right in line with that, with the exception of of Lake of the Pines, which has a couple different things than we have. You also find that their cost per parcel, okay, their net loss per parcel, what they have to fund from homeowners dues, if you look at it, it's remarkable how similar they are. Okay, it's one of the things that jumps out of this analysis. So for us, including OSS, we need to generate about $1,196 per parcel in order to cover those. Yeah?
You keep on talking about where golf is, where golf stands in terms of what it costs for the golf course, but if I look at this report, security at the other three venues, far up, I mean, they have 24 hours.
Right. Well, and we're going to get to that, Roger. 'Cause we're going to break that down a little bit more when we do some other comparisons, and it'd be easier to see it when we break it out on a slightly different way. But what was interesting that came out of this when you break this out, okay, because we have not fully normalized this yet, right? We haven't taken out what they do and what we do, and these are just the general operating numbers, okay? But what's interesting is that for the other three associations, $1,713 per parcel, $1,740 per parcel, and $1,809 per parcel. That group's pretty close together. Okay, so it's the question is why, but nonetheless it's an interesting thing. It's an interesting thing to note that can cause us to ask some good questions.
Is there a hidden message here? Financial overview, folks.
Well, no, that actually stands for operations. But the oops, that's I'll keep that one in mind for next time. So what the graph shows down at the bottom is a summary of what's in these tables. It shows the blue line shows the revenue, and the red line shows the expenses. Okay, and the green line shows the net operating loss from operations. All right, that's what has to be funded by association dues. Okay? Okay.
So based on that, we're doing pretty well.
Based on that, we spend a lot less money than the other associations do, and we operate a lot more efficiently. We're going to see some of those numbers here in a minute. Okay, so now what we've done is this slide I've standardized the categories. So I've rolled some together. So for example, admin and ECC. Pine Mountain Lake doesn't split out ECC separate from their admin costs. So if we want to do a comparison, we got to roll those together. Okay? I split out golf, food and beverage, rec, security, public works. Okay, public works it covers roads, maintenance, and their facilities maintenance. Okay? We break those out into 3 different categories when we do our financials at our board meetings. But in order to do the comparison, we have to roll those together. Okay, make sense? Okay, so a couple interesting things pop out of this. So I've also calculated for you here the cost per lot per month for each of these services. All right? I know this can get a little dry, but I think this is important information for us to understand. So, so bear with me as we run through this. Okay, we spend $22 per month for admin and ECC. That's what it costs per lot. So each one of us who owns a lot here pays $22 a month for admin. We pay $7 a month to have our golf. Okay, we pay $12.68 for food and beverage. Rec, we subsidize $4.13. Security costs us $9.32. And public works, we currently spend $17.62. Okay, on our roads, our maintenance, and our other facilities. Okay, so for a total of $73.25. Okay, so that's what we spend. That's what we spend to manage and have those amenities. Yeah.
Does that include the special fund for the Heights project?
No, this number, the $73 does not, because the other associations don't have that. So to compare us to the other associations, I'm splitting out what matches and what doesn't match.
Do you know how much that is per lot?
It's about $300 per lot. Right, but for all of the other associations, the way that would be financed, it would be financed through their water bill. Right, they pay it in their water bills. So they still have to pay it, they just pay it a different way.
Jonathan, that $300 is per year, not per month.
Right.
those
Yeah.
numbers up there per
Yeah,
month.
these are per month.
You got the 300.
$300 is a yearly number?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, $699,000 is what the funding for OSS is. Okay, but to compare to the other associations, since they don't have that, I've got to get us on an apples to apples comparison. So on that basis, we spend $73.25 per month to have these amenities. Okay? Bear Valley Springs, $28 for admin, $12 for golf, $17, almost $18 for food and beverage. Rec is $14.94. Security, just under $12. And Public Works, they spend $46 a month. Okay? Lake of the Pines, $37 per month for admin. Okay, they're on the high end of that side for sure. Golf runs them about $11 a month. Food and beverage, $11 a month. And one thing to note, when you look at the menus, the reason that they are lower than we are in food and beverage costs is because their main restaurant charges about $10 more a plate than ours does. Okay? And that's why the benefit of looking at and seeing these numbers, is important, because you got to look at the number and you got to say, why? Why is that different? Are we doing something inefficient? Are they doing something better? Well, we could charge $10 more a plate, I guess. But on food and beverage, I'll also note that I didn't find any of the other associations that do as many special events and as many, the buffets that we do, all the special activities that we do. I didn't find any of the other associations actually as involved as ours is. So that actually is, I thought that was a good point to note. And that overall, our food and beverage operates very, very cost effectively compared to other associations. And the revenue that we generate, the amount we use it, and how efficiently it's run. So for security, Lake of the Pines spends, quite a bit of money. They're $25 a month there. Public Works, they spend $47. Remember, Public Works is roads and maintenance. Pine Mountain Lake spends $32 a month per lot for admin and ECC. Their golf costs them about $14. Food and beverage runs them almost $20. Now, that number is a little skewed for them right now because their main restaurant is closed and being refurbished. Okay, they're spending about $1.5 million to redo their main restaurant, which closed last February. Okay, so again, you can't just look at the numbers; you got to dig into the numbers to find out what's going on. Security, they spend $24 a month, and Public Works they spend $49. So again, we find something really interesting. When we compare ourselves to the other associations on a per lot basis, we find we're at 73. We got 131, 138, and 140. The other three associations, again, are grouped surprisingly close in terms of what it costs to operate. Okay?
In other words, we should be paying more.
Well, I'm not drawing any conclusions tonight. I'm sharing the information.
I would be willing to pay more.
Tonight I'm just sharing the information so we can look at what's different and where we're, Okay, so if we take the average of what the other associations spend on each of these categories and we compare it to what we spend, okay, that's what this chart here in the bottom left shows us. It gives us a feel for, how are we doing? So we spend $22 in admin. The average is $32. So we're 31% less expensive in our administrative functions than the other associations are on average. Okay? So that's good, right? That's good. Golf. We're 44% less expensive on average than the other associations are in what it takes to fund and have our golf course here. All right?
Thanks to the volunteers.
A lot of volunteers, and we have I will tell you what, guys, we have a great contract for maintenance of that golf course. Compared to what the other associations do, ours is extremely affordable. Okay? Food and beverage. Okay, we're 22% less expensive in food and beverage in terms of what the homeowners have to fund every month on a per lot basis. Okay? Recreation, about 42%. That one's kind of skewed because we have a couple that spend a lot on recreation. Bear Valley Springs, for example, spends a lot on, that's something that's important to their community. They spend a lot more on that type of thing than we do. Security, 54% less expensive than other associations. Public Works, we spend 63% less funds on public works than other associations. That's roads and maintenance. Okay? So, yes, Ken?
Do you have any knowledge what condition their infrastructure is?
Yeah, I do. The water company for Lake of the Pines is in good shape. They service about 8 different municipalities up there, and they're in good shape.
Outside of their own community?
Right. Well, and Lake of the Pines community too. Now, Pine Mountain Lake, on the other hand, okay, is in a bad spot, and their rates are going up quite significantly. Same thing with Bear Valley Springs. Bear Valley Springs, in fact, they just raised their rates this year for the first time in about 10 years. They used to charge $25 per month per household plus water usage fees. They bumped them up this year to about $44. They go up to $75 next year. They go up to $85 within the next 4 or 5 years. Okay, and it's because they weren't investing in the infrastructure, which in that situation, remember, that's not the homeowners association. That's the community service district, right?
So that's pretty much a statewide phenomenon.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've seen the same thing going on all over here. Oakhurst is the same thing has happened. Bass Lake, the same thing has happened. So it's pretty universal, actually, all across the state as it relates to infrastructure. Bear Valley Springs spends $3.1 million on maintaining their roads. Okay, that's what it takes to fund their road maintenance. Okay, and they're staying up pretty good, more on that. So when you look at this,
Jonathan,
yeah.
this lady had a question.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
I'm just gonna say, those figures you were throwing out before, is that the same as ready to serve?
Yes. Those are the equivalent ready to serve fees. Yeah. And actually, the cost for water in Pine Mountain Lake is about per gallon. Runs about twice what it runs here, almost twice. And all of them actually are also moving towards tiered rates, where if you use more than 500 acre feet, use more than 500 cubic feet, the rates almost double. Just FYI. So.
Now, the water tax that our governor wants to...
Questions so we can hear them over here?
Good point. I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you.
With the water tax our governor wants to put on us for drinking water, is that going to affect our water company? Are we going to pay that, or is our water company different?
Yeah, on the water company ones, I'm happy to talk about it, but since I don't have the data here to show the water company stuff specifically, I'd like to table that one.
All right.
Okay? And what I was sharing with you tonight about the water company was just also part of the water companies in the other locations, was part of my research and looking into what else is going on. I didn't put it on the graphs. They also pay sewer fees in Lake of the Pines and Pine Mountain Lake of about $100 a month, which we don't have to pay, right? What's that?
We pay the road fees.
Yes, but we pay $3 a month. They pay $100 a month. So, yeah. So when we're all said and done, we spend about 46% less per home each year on these amenities than the other associations.
You're
Yeah.
not gonna publish this, right, so everybody moves here?
Yeah. That will actually help us collect on some of those older accounts that haven't paid. So, okay. So before we move on from this slide, any more questions specifically as it relates to understanding this data? Okay. Yes, sir.
Why are we spending so much less than all the other communities?
Okay. So the question was, why are we spending so much less than the other communities? Okay. Well, we look at these numbers. All right, the biggest part of it comes right here in terms of infrastructure. Okay, that's why they spend $30. They spend $30 per parcel per year on maintaining and improving their infrastructure that we're not currently spending. Per month. Sorry, per month. Okay, that's the biggest difference. There also are other differences. We are more efficient. Our food and beverage is a lot more efficient than theirs. Okay? So we don't want to change that, right? Our golf is a lot more efficient than theirs. Our admin, is a lot less expensive than theirs. Security, we spend less. That's an open question of, does the community want more security and pay more for that or not? That's a community decision.
Jonathan, do they
Yeah.
all have their own internal administration in-house, or?
Yes. They all have their own internal administration and staff. I don't have numbers for the size of the staff, but based on the budgets, their staffing is a little higher than ours is.
What is ours?
Ours in terms of employees?
Yeah, the staffing. I mean.
Yeah, we have about 50 full-time employees, and then we have about another 35 full-time equivalents. So we have about 85 FTEs total when you factor in the part-time work at the pool and restaurants and those types of things. Yeah. Okay. All right. So, but the answer to the question of why do we spend, why is it so much lower? The biggest chunk is the infrastructure piece. Okay. Okay. Reserves. This is an interesting thing to take a look at also. Okay. Our annual assessment without OSS, remember, because we're standardizing this to compare. Our annual assessment's higher than this, but for the purpose of comparing us to other associations, apples to apples, I'm including without OSS. So our assessment per lot is about just out of $1,000. Okay? We don't have a CSD assessment, only Bear Valley Springs has that. So our total assessment's about $1,000 a year. The portion that we're sending to reserves this year, is $175,000. Okay? So in our budget, it's $100,000, but the board this year wanted to improve the accuracy of our accounting. So some of the items that we had approved as CapEx expenses, we rolled into reserve expenses because they're replacement items. So because they're replacement items, they technically should come out of our reserve. We shouldn't have to pay for those every year. They should come out of the reserve funds. Okay? So the percent that we send to reserves is 8%. Okay, 8% of the dues we collect go to reserves. Okay, which works out to $78 per year per lot, or about $6.50 per month. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, so Bear Valley Springs, their annual assessment is $5.3 million. Oh, question?
Can you explain
Yeah.
what reserves mean?
Yeah, we just have.
Okay.
It's not savings.
It's not savings. What reserves are, so all of the facilities and amenities and the clubhouse, all the roads, all of those things are going to need repairs in the future. So the reserves are the money you set aside to pay for those when those expenses come due in the future. Okay? And the reason it's important to do that is if you don't do that, when you get to the future, you don't have the money to pay for those improvements or those repairs. Okay? All right. So Bear Valley Springs, $5.3 million in annual assessment. That's $1,481 per lot. Remember, they pay a special tax of $495 a year. So that means that they're paying per home $1,976 a year to have the same things we have. Okay? They put $913,000 a year into their reserves. Okay, that's why why their dues are so much higher than ours, because they're taking $913,000 of that assessment and put it into the reserves to pay for stuff in the future. 17% of what they collect goes into reserves. It's $255 per lot per year, or $21 a month. Okay? Now, Bear Valley Springs, of all of the 4 associations, Bear Valley Springs is in the best shape with their reserves and their regular improvement of their properties. Okay? So their reserves don't need to be as high, what they fund each year, because they have a lot of reserves. We're going to talk, we'll show that one in a few minutes, when we get to the second part of the graph. What's that? Okay. Lake of the Pines, $5.7 million is their annual assessment, which is $2,884 per lot. Okay? They put $1.79 million to reserves every year. Now, Lake of the Pines went through a situation where they were way under reserved, so they've had pretty significant increases in their dues to fund that. They actually have a multi-year plan to get their reserves in shape to handle the things. But they're actually on track and they're doing pretty good already. But they put 31% of all the dues they collect go into the reserve fund to pay for the improvements and repairs that need to happen in the future. Okay? It's $896 per lot per year. Okay, or more than 10 times what we do. Yeah, so monthly it's $75, right? So they put as much into reserves every year as it costs us to operate all of the amenities that we have, right? I mean, it's an interesting, we can ask the questions why, right? I mean, again, tonight I'm not drawing any conclusions. There's no other agenda other than to share the information with you so we can then talk about it as a community. But it's interesting, isn't it? Pine Mountain Lake, $2 million goes into reserves. Their dues have gone up quite significantly over the last several years also. Which, they also had some changeover in their general manager. They fired their general manager, I think, earlier this year. But I will tell you, they're actually on track to get their reserves up and going. So $2 million go into reserves. 25% of their dues are $588 a month, or $588 a year, or $49 a month. Okay. So just as a comparison, right? Just gives us a benchmark. What are other associations doing to plan for the future and to maintain their amenities and improve their facilities as they go forward? Okay. All right. So let's look at the bottom part of this page. This shows what their actual current balances are in their reserves and how much money they're spending, okay, every year out of their reserves to do the maintenance and upgrade. And by the way, guys, this is over and above what they spent on the previous page. The $47 that they spent, that was out of their monthly dues. That's not part of this. Okay? So YLP, we currently have $422,000 in reserves. Okay? Now that's gone up. Okay, it went up $72,000 last year. It went up $36,000 the year before that. It's going up $100,000 roughly this year, based on what our budget is. Okay, so we make $175,000 contribution this year. We're spending about $92,000 from reserves, and so we're going to have a projected reserve of about $500,000 at the end of this fiscal year. Okay, now we do have to tap into reserve funds from time to time with the approval of the board, as we have old items that are breaking down. Okay. For example, we've had a couple of those this year. One, we had the refrigerator in the kitchen go out. That was scheduled for replacement a couple of years ago, but it didn't get replaced. So when it broke, we had to fix it. The AC unit in the lounge, okay, quit working about 3 weeks ago. Okay. The board authorized replacement of that, which should come from reserve funds. That's what reserve funds are for. We're having that replaced actually tomorrow, but that cost us $9,500. Okay? So Bear Valley Springs put $856,000 into their reserves this year. They're spending about $514,000, okay, investing in, improving, and maintaining their existing facilities from their reserve funds. These are like scheduled replacements, right? Things that reach end of life. That's going to leave them with about $3.5 million in their reserve fund balance at the end of the year. Okay? Yes, sir.
Do any of these HOAs see any property tax money from their counties?
The HOAs do not. No. Bear Valley Springs, some of their property tax money goes to the community service district, which helps fund the police department, the regular government. But I've actually taken that out of this for purposes of comparison.
Yeah, but that's like a special assessment though, correct?
Yeah, it's a special assessment.
That's not really part of their property taxes, it's above the property.
It's above their property taxes, right? But they do get the 1% that offsets some of those costs. Yes. No, just Bear Valley Springs. Yes.
So, when we look at the top section for Bear Valley and for Lake of the Pines, this is what we're putting portion to reserves, and it's a different amount from what you're showing as the reserve contribution. Is there
Yeah, they come from different reports. Yeah, they come from different reports in their financial statements. And so some of the, in order to get those numbers, I can't take them all straight off of one place. Okay, and so like Bear Valley Springs, that's the number they spent last fiscal year. They actually spent. Okay, but it's a great question. Good point. For Lake of the Pines, the reason it's different, okay, because they have some other special assessments. They borrowed some money several years ago to replace some of their facilities. So the portion that they put into reserves is actually paying back the money they already borrowed. So they're not actually putting cash into the reserves because $300 a month goes to pay off the loan that they took because they didn't have reserves 5 years ago. Okay, so there's a legitimate reason why those numbers could be different, because you can service other things than just reserves. It's serving the debt on stuff that should have been funded by reserves before, because they already spent that money. It's not going back in right now. Does that make sense? All right. I mean, if it doesn't, I'll try to explain it again. I mean, this, you can get buried in the details of the financial statements. I mean, quite honestly, it's, we don't have full disclosure, right? For them, this is information that's available publicly on their websites. I pulled it out of the reports that they have. But Lake of the Pines in particular, they're actually the only one of the four right now that has that type of issue where they're paying back a loan, okay, which technically comes out of their funding to reserves, but it doesn't go into the reserve bank. Does that make sense? Okay, so they're going to spend, right, so they're going to spend $1.9 million, Lake of the Pines is, this year according to their pro forma budget that just came out on January 1st. So they're going to have about $3.1 million in reserves. Yeah?
I have a question on the reserve study, because the reserve study is usually made up of a list of components
Yes.
that have to be replaced.
Yes.
And that's spread out because there's a lot of different, what you call it, life in these
Yes.
different components, right? 5
Yes.
years, 20 years, you figure out how much.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I guess the question, I have two questions with regards to that. One, do we have enough funds to meet our every year our obligation of what our reserve study shows that has to be replaced? Are we replacing all of those?
Okay, let me answer that one first so that everybody cares. So the question is, do we have enough money in our reserves, and are we replacing all of the items on our reserve study when they say they should be replaced? Okay. The answer to that is no, we don't, and we are not. That's why the AC breaks, because it didn't get replaced when it was scheduled to be replaced. Okay? All right, next question.
So what percent funded are we?
That's a great question. Okay? Okay, the question is, what percent funded are we? That question is a little bit tricky, not in terms of answering, but in terms of understanding what percent funded means, right? Because the way reserves work, and what I anticipated actually is we'll have another session to go through reserves in detail. I was just kind of trying to provide an overview tonight. But the way reserves work, what you figure out is you total up all of the things that you have to replace or maintain, okay? And you figure out what does it cost to do that today. So for example, Lake of the Pines, $13 million. If they were going to replace everything today, they'd have to have $13 million in the bank. Okay? That's what it would cost them to do that. However, you don't have to replace all of that today. Right? Some of it you're going to replace next year, some of it you're going to replace in 10 years, some of it you're going to replace in 20 years. So you only need a certain percentage of that future cost now. So you don't have to fund your reserves 100%. Okay? A lot of times people might think, oh, we're not 100% funded, that's bad. No, what you want to do is you want to fund your reserves so you never fall below zero. Okay, so you always have enough money to handle the replacement when it needs to be replaced. Okay, so usually a good funding for reserves, and they all vary depending on the life expectancy of the items on your list. But if you're funded in the neighborhood of 30 to 60%, you're usually very solidly funded. But it all depends on how big those expenses are going to be and when they happen.
Yeah, but just in case fund.
No. The reserves are not just in case fund. Reserves are a planned expense. They're planned so that you avoid having things break. I mean, it needs to be built into your budget. It really does.
The car before it burns up because you didn't.
Yeah. Contingency, on the other hand, isn't just in case. And there are things that happen that are unpredictable. That you don't like. You may have to, because reserves are all based on estimates, right? You estimate how long the life is going to be. You have a car, a truck that you think is going to last 10 more years. Well, it doesn't. It breaks next year, and it's not cost effective to repair it. Well, what do? Well, you go fund it out of reserves, and then you got to make that up after the fact, right? But the point is to have enough money in reserves to cover the scheduled maintenance. Yes, sir.
So there you have a timeline for every item that's in your reserve. Each item in the reserves has a life expectancy.
Yes.
Some might be 5 years, another 20 years, another 50 years. So if you lay out those expenses out over a timeline, then you say each year moving forward, you need to have a certain amount of money augmenting each year in order to be able to fund those future expenses that will be coming due. How well do you say we are along on that timeline? Are we on track in our timeline, or are we behind in the timeline?
Okay. So I don't know if everybody heard. That's an excellent explanation of what reserves are for. Okay. So just to reiterate that part for people that didn't hear, reserves are setting aside the money for replacements you need to do in the future at the end of an item's scheduled life. Okay, and the question is, how are we doing with that? Okay? But I wasn't going to get into the details of the reserve piece tonight, but the frank answer is not very well. Okay? And in fact, I don't even, all right, I gotta spit this out, because look, this is straight up, guys. This is kind of like homeowner to homeowner stuff. This is giving you the information, right? I don't think our reserve study, okay, has accurate replacement cost numbers. Okay? I think our reserve study underestimates the actual replacement cost, which means it doesn't help us in answering that question. As an example, our reserve study, our most recent reserve study, says our replacement cost for asphalt is $353,000. Okay, I'm going to tell you guys it costs $500,000 to pave that parking lot out there, much less replace any of the roads. Okay?
Regardless of if it's inaccuracies, the situation is bad even without.
Yes. And Ken is making the point, even if there are no inaccuracies, the situation is bad. Okay? As it relates to reserves. All right. Another example, our reserve study says the cost to replace the AC units in this building should be about $10,000. Well, I got a quote, guys, in November. It's $50,000 to replace all of the AC units in this building, and they need to be replaced. Like that one broke last month. This one broke last year. Okay? Yep, I got one question behind you. So, Neil?
Yeah, I just wanted, it's kind of a two-part question. I've never been to the other three homeowners associations, but I would wager heavily that they are in very nice condition, up to date, modernized, everything's beautiful, wonderful, and they're paying the price for it. We have an average of 60-some thousand a year, they're all 80 plus a year. There's 25% disparity, so they have more money, obviously, coming from different areas. I guess my question was, in a ratio standpoint, where do we stand with their dues versus our dues? This is where it's all going. And I understand you're getting there. But obviously, we are way under in our responsibility to pay the dues, homeowner, to keep our place up as the other places in the area.
Okay. So, did everybody hear what Neil said? Yeah. Okay.
What did he say? We're gonna pay more money.
His question is, I'll get to you, John, just a second. His question was related to, relative to the economic situation in our community to the other communities, what type of ratio do we need to fund? How much more do we need to fund to catch up and maintain and improve things? Okay? I can't give you a detailed answer to that
No
question.
number yet.
Right.
So the big thing is, folks, this place has not been updated in 25 years. Okay? We are living in 1970s era. Everything around here is entire park. We've been here since 1992, and we made it work. It's been successful with low dues and everything else, but per these stats on the chart, it hasn't changed. We got to do some
Yeah.
major things to it.
Well, and what's happened, I'll come back just a second. What's happened with Lake of the Pines and Bear Valley Springs, for example, they recognized this a couple years ago. Okay? So they made those changes. Lake of the Pine Mountain Lake. Okay? Their dues have gone up a lot recently because they had kicked the can down the road. All right? And guys, it's a tough question. All right? There is no single, simple answer. We're not going to solve the problem in a year. We're not going to solve the problem in 5 years. Okay? What my recommendation is that we look more into these numbers and we make a 20-year plan based on what this community and the board prioritize. Okay? And I will promise you I will do the best at being the most efficient with the money that we have to get the things done that we need. Okay? But we can only operate with what we have. And we've been, as Neil pointed out, we have been very economical. We have been very successful at keeping the cost down. We're very efficient in a lot of our areas. Our golf course, our food and beverage services, our admin costs. I mean, these are good things.
The problem with that thought is, though, Jonathan.
Okay, can I come back? I had a couple other people waiting for questions. So, Beata, I think you were next. What's the question?
Okay, well, I've done some more research myself, and I'm looking at Pine Mountain Lake Association, and I'm also looking at the Lake of Pines. And they have quite a bit more amenities than we have. And so they're going to need higher reserves. And
Yeah.
those like Pine Mountain Lake Association.
Yeah, Beata, I'd be happy to talk about this more at the end, but what we're looking at right now is comparing it out to normalized numbers, okay?
I have one question on the reserves, okay? We just bought property at Grove Drive for $370,000.
Yeah, that's in the water company,
Which was a really good move.
right?
And it saves us $15,000 in rent, and also gives us a cash flow of $18,000 for tenants. So
Right.
it's $33,000 a year.
Right, that's,
Now, why can't we use some of that money to build our reserves?
okay, because that money's in the water company, okay? And we can't use the money from the water company directly in the association. And also buying real estate doesn't take money out of reserves. It's a whole different conversation when we talk about reserves for the water company. Okay, which we can do in a different town hall, promise. Yes, sir.
So, the bad news is we're behind in funding our reserves. In the past, we fiddled while we're on the verge. So now we know what the reality is. We're going forward, we need to have a plan. So you indicated that is being looked at and how to do it. My question was simply going to be, does the board know where we stand? And is the board actively moving forward to come up with a new reserve plan, even if it means raising our dues
Yeah.
in successive years?
Right.
It would be better to raise your dues a little bit now than have a special assessment of a couple $1,000 that comes unexpected.
Yeah, and, okay, so the question is the board aware of this situation and are we making a plan to address it going forward? The answer to that is yes, okay? The engineering committee has doubled the amount of time that they are meeting because they're going through the reserve study line by line. They're evaluating all of the property in the park. And my recommendation to the board will be in this budget year that we get a new reserve study done by a different firm than has done the reserve study before. Okay? So, yeah, I had another question over here. Yeah.
Okay, so you had mentioned it's good when the houses are selling because then you get caught up on the dues that hasn't been paid.
Yeah.
So where are we on that? I mean, out of, what'd you say,
Good.
2,253 sites?
Right.
What percentage is not getting paid? How many lots
Okay.
are not paid?
That's a great question, and write it down for me. We'll come back to it when we finish this part. because I'm happy to talk about it. And I'll be honest with you, that is the number one priority that I'm working on as soon as this town hall meeting was done, is getting our collections process more, we'll call it politely aggressive. Okay, so another question over here. We're back to, okay.
The comment I had was based on what Neil was talking about. You know, we've lived 40 years on what we have, and the expected life of a lot of these facilities is between 30 and 40 years.
Right.
And so we're at the edge right now where things are gonna start breaking more and more, and we see that, occasionally now. So, we're way behind the eight ball to do anything.
Yeah.
We need to catch up.
Yeah, so the comment was that, because we haven't done this for lots of years, that we've got a lot of stuff that's right at the end of life. And he's right, we have stuff that's at the end of life. That's why it's gonna take, a commitment as a community. We gotta pull together, we gotta prioritize what we wanna do, we gotta make a long-term plan. And we have to be committed to stick to it in order to take care of these issues. I wish I had a different message. Be honest, I wish we had $5 million in our reserves and we could just go take care of things right now. But I'm not doing my job if I don't bring this information to you in the community, share that with you, and then work together to figure out how we're going to solve the problem. Because the problems are solvable. They are solvable. They're just, we just may not like all the answers. Yeah. Yes, the reserves are invested. We're limited in what we invest in to very secure. So we can put it either in CDs, CDARs, or U.S. Treasuries. Okay, they produce a very low rate of return. Okay, but the reason for that, okay, is because we are limited by how you can invest reserves. Okay, we're limited by law in how we can invest reserves. Yeah. Yeah. What's that? Okay. Any other questions where we're on this point? Okay, so it's good. I didn't plan to go into the reserve detail so much. I just wanted to share with you what was there, but.
Well, the bottom line is, that's the problem.
Yeah.
Should I give you an invite to the next meeting?
Yeah, well, anybody that wants to help with the reserves, okay?
Next engineering committee is the 5th of February at 4 o'clock in his office. If we get enough people, we'll move it out here. First hour is going to be on the reserve. Second hour is everything else that was on the board.
What was
I'm
the
the
date?
chairman of that committee.
Yeah. February 5th. 4 p.m.? 4 p.m. If we had enough interest, would you swap the time part? So we could do the reserve part at 5 if we needed
More
to.
people are working or something, we can do it. In fact, I don't know about the rest of the folks on the committee, but I'm certainly willing to stay, much later than 5 and not go to the other committee meetings if we need to.
Right, and if
That's the thing we've got to look at, folks.
yeah, and if there are people here that want to participate in that, talk to David. He's the chair of that committee, and they can move times around. All right, right now we have time scheduled because all the people in that committee are available at that time. So, yes, ma'am.
I heard one time that, on the line account, you put so much money into reserve because in 7 years you're going to replace this item or it's going to need replacement or whatever. Okay, at the time they do that though, they don't consider what it's going to cost in 7 years. They base it on what it's going to cost today.
Yeah, the reserve study is supposed to make an assumption about what the inflation rate is. So that's why you start with today's cost, and then if it's 10 years in the future, you've assumed, like our reserve study assumes a 2.5% inflation rate. So you assume it's going to be 2.5% more each year, so that the future replacement cost takes that into account. But it's very important to do that. So one thing of note that's interesting on this one, Pine Mountain Lake, okay, is they're spending $3.7 million this year out of their reserve funds. Okay? Out of years in reserve funds, they're spending $3.75 million out of the reserves. Yes, sir.
Are the insurance policies for all these different places, are they all the same, right? What's the difference in insurance?
Yeah, insurance, we're also regulated in terms of what insurance we're supposed to have and provide, or we're supposed to have to protect the park. Yeah, everybody, and those disclosures are all in the annual statements, and we have different carriers. The carrier for 2 of the parks, I don't know about the 3rd one, I didn't see their actual annual statement, but it's, I think it's Aon Risk Services. And, you know, we write ours through Philadelphia. We get the best rates for our policy through Philadelphia. Okay, we had another, yes, sir.
I'm just kind of thinking towards the future, you know, I think it's kind of obvious that we're underfunded and there probably will be an increase in our HOA fees. And I think that curb appeal is an important thing for selling homes. There's 8 homes for sale, a lot of them have been for sale for a while. And, you know, improving our community by a small adjustment in the HOAs could lead to a good return in our property value.
Yeah.
So what does it take to, what is the process of raising the HOA fees? Like what does that look like?
Okay, so the comment was, you know, that making the community look better increases the value of the homes, right? And the follow-up question is, what does it take to change our dues? Well, that happens at the budget meeting. Okay, changing the dues happens at the budget meeting. Okay, which is March 30th. What time is it, Becky? Starts at 9:30 in the morning. It usually goes all day. But it's the budget meeting, and that's, you know, the board gets feedback from the community. The board proposes a budget. Well, I help prepare the budget and give it to the cooperation with the board. The board presents that to the community, gets feedback, and then the board passes the budget.
There's not a vote?
There's not a vote in passing the budget. That's a board item. If the board can, per law, can increase dues no more than 20% a year. Okay, without a vote of the community. Okay, any special assessment that would be done has to be done by a vote of the community because of our bylaws, not because of the state laws.
Did I hear you say that the property would look better in this park if our homeowners association
No.
No, I kind of heard
No. The comment was related. So the question from the corner was, did she hear him say that the property would look better if the homeowners' dues went up? I think the comment was the opposite of that. That if homeowners' dues went up and we did the repairs and we did some beautification projects, that would increase the value and price of the properties and potentially help properties sell more quickly. Okay. So on that note, guys, those are some of the things we've been working on doing this year. Okay, it's why we're replacing the street signs. Okay, we don't have lots of money, as you can see from our reserves, but we're starting. That creates appeal when you drive in and you see street signs that you can actually see at night from a safety standpoint. But also, you know, it looks like we're doing something, you know, and we are doing something. There are other projects. Those have been my priority items to find what are the places where we can spend a little bit of money to get a lot of return.
Cleaning up a lot of dead trees.
Okay. So, and that's another, you know, cleaning up dead trees, right? That's a safety issue, but it's also a park attractiveness issue. Yes, sir.
I just noticed the new street signs coming in the park the other day, and it looks nice. What are we doing with the old street signs?
You know, I missed this one. I did not think this was going to be, you know, this is more popular than Dave's Meatloaf, I'm telling you. So we will be making those signs available for sale to the people that are interested in them. Okay? We have enough people interested in them that we're probably going to need to do it on an auction basis in order to be fair. Okay? You know, yeah, just gotta promise that, you know, that no fist fights over those street signs, and no street signs disappearing before we replace them. Becky. Oh. Yeah, we may actually. Actually, it's kind of interesting. Based on the interest that has been placed in those signs, we're going to recover a significant portion of the cost of putting the new signs in. Yes, Bianca. I can't hear you. Been audited in terms of a formal audit? Because there are different types of reviews. We haven't had an external formal audit. I don't know the answer to that question. Yes, that's an audit by the PUC. Okay, but not a financial, but which is a financial audit, but it's not an audit by an auditor. Okay, we could elect to do that if the board wanted to. They could vote to have somebody conduct a full audit of our books. Okay, what we do though is we have an accounting firm that prepares those books, and they provide a statement of accuracy. Okay, which is not the same as a full audit. They're not going through and auditing every item, but they're testifying to the validity of the numbers based on their review. Okay.
Mark probably knows, our historian. Mark's over.
Hey, Mark.
Every year, each of the two separate corporations has a CPA review. And as Jonathan mentioned, that is slightly less than a full audit. They are very careful about particularly how much cash we have. They do go through that. They do some sampling of all the other accounts, but not quite a full audit. And it does cost us a little bit less. Those financial statements are then sent out to every lot of them, every year. So you should have them, and the water company one will be coming out shortly.
Yeah, water company ones were completed in January, and no, I'm sorry, that's not the water company ones. HOA ones were completed in January. That's final file. Okay. All right. I think I've got another slide that just kind of brings home the point about reserves in terms of comparing us to other associations. Okay. Right. And guys, we're ahead of where we were. We're ahead of where we were before. Okay. We started chipping away at this a couple years ago. We added a little bit more last year. We're adding a little bit more this year. But you can see this is something we're going to have to figure out as a community.
One read somewhere that you're changing the fiscal year of the both corporations so they match?
Okay, the question was, are we changing the fiscal year of both corporations so they match? No, the water company has a fiscal year beginning January 1st. The association has a fiscal year beginning June 1st. However, our dues are not due until July 1st. So we actually set up a budget that has 1 month from the previous fiscal year and 11 months of the next fiscal year. You can imagine it makes it complicated. So the board approved, per my recommendation, that we change our fiscal year to align with our actual budget year. Okay, and it's pretty much a bookkeeping issue, but it simplifies things for us quite a bit. Yes, sir. Oh, man, sorry. There's a light.
You drilling again at the golf course. Does that come out of the water company, or does that come out of the?
Yeah, the drilling at the golf course comes from the water company. And that was already approved in the budget. That was approved last May. And we have, we can have a town hall meeting to talk about water company details too, or we can cover those questions in a board meeting potentially. But the water company is in decent shape right now. We have plenty of cash in the water company at the present moment. Okay. Yeah, tonight. Okay. So I'm gonna make, I wasn't sure, if I was gonna do this tonight, but again, the point of this presentation is to share information with the community. Okay, there's not a specific recommendation. There's not other than we do something. We get together and we work together to make a plan. okay? But, you know, I came across some interesting information just from a comparative standpoint. The average HOA dues, okay, across the country in 2005, okay, were $250 a month, okay? The average HOA dues in 2015 across the country, $333 a month, okay? Now, I am by no means saying, hey guys, hold on, that's what we're doing. No, not at all. Not at all. I don't recommend that. But I wanted to bring that point up to say, look what a great deal we get for what we have. Okay? And I hope at the very least that everybody comes away from this meeting understanding, you know, compared to other associations, right, we are very fiscally responsible about operating our amenities. And we may be a little bit too lean on some of those, okay? You know, but our golf course, for example, you know, way less expensive than other golf courses. And we're finding ways to be creative about that and improve it even more. So I don't know how many golfers we have in the room tonight. Good, got a lot of you guys. But we're making improvements to every hole on the golf course this year. It's not costing us a lot of money. Okay, it's coming out of our existing contract. We replaced the bathroom, you know, I think it cost us $800 or something to paint the bathroom and replace, and it's nice now, okay? We cut down trees, okay? The just deferred maintenance that needed to be done, but guys, that stuff isn't always expensive. So that's the first order of business, be smart with our money, okay? Because I want you guys to have confidence that we are smart with the way we're spending the money. We're not going to waste the money we have. We may disagree on the priorities, and ultimately the board tells me what the priorities are, okay? But that's the first goal. Be smart with our money. And second is prioritize what we want to spend it on together as a community. So, Neil.
Just a question, I guess, about all our amenities. Obviously, we have plenty of them that different people use different ones. Not everybody uses every one. But I guess what percentage of our, household worth is based on our amenities that we have? And if we lose them, what do we do?
Right. So did people hear that? The question was what percentage of our property values are based on having the amenities in the park, and how would that impact property values if we lost the amenities? Okay? Obviously, it's impossible to answer that directly, but we do have a little bit of information for what happened not very far from us when they shut their golf course down. They shut their golf course down and property values dropped. I think it was between about $40,000 and $50,000.
Who's they?
Someone help me with this one. Marie? Awani. Okay. We had another one. Can you help me with this one? Where? Fig Garden. Okay.
A number of them are closing, and people who live there are devastated. Our house prices dropped 30%.
Yeah, I mean, and it's like, well, people aren't playing golf anyway, so if nobody's using it, why wouldn't you shut it down? But it is amazing having that potential there, you know, improves the value of the property, even if you don't use it. It's like my mom used to tell me growing up, just, you know, we had a swimming pool, and she'd say, just having a swimming pool in the backyard cooled her off because she knew she could jump in it if she wanted to. Even though she didn't do it very often, there was a value just in having it there, you know?
Most of us would like to go swimming year round.
I would love that. I would love to be able to do that.
I don't want to pay for you to do that.
All right. The comment was she wants to swim year round. The secondary comment is he doesn't want to pay for doing that. I don't want to.
Against my husband.
I don't want to be. I don't want to be in the car with you guys on the way home. Yeah. There's tons of volunteer work in this community, by the way. Speaking of that, if anybody that serves on a board or is a board member, if you guys wouldn't mind standing up. Presently, okay. So Beata, that's you too. You're on the governing docs committee. You're on the governing docs committee, Marie, and the trails committee, right? So, okay, Trails Committee. So, guys, we have a lot of people here that volunteer a lot of time. I'll tell you, the Governing Docs Committee is going back through years' worth of board minutes to pull out, prior past. Oh, there's another one. She's on the Finance Committee. Right. Yeah, but community involvement is great here. I mean, we really have a phenomenal community and a great group of people. I really am, pleased and blessed to be here. Even though we got some challenges ahead of us, they're all solvable. They're all solvable. All right. Any more questions, comments on this as we wrap up this part? Okay, so we had an earlier question about receivables. So I have been spending, in addition to this, I've been spending the majority of my time actually going through our receivables. Okay, analyzing our receivables, looking at. We have a limitation with our software, okay, that prevents us from telling what dues we received this year belong to this year's dues, and what dues did we receive belong to last year's dues. Okay? I can only tell you how much we received, but I can't tell you did it pay this year's dues or last year's dues. Okay? Which it is, which is why we're going to be fixing it. Promise, we're going to get it fixed. And the reports we get from our current financial software just don't give us insight into the receivables process, into the whole, not the receivables process, but into the receivables trends and history. Okay? That's why I took the data out of that system, put it into a different system, wrote a bunch of custom reports to analyze that. Okay? I'm just waiting for the finals for our most recent final financials, and in the next board meeting, you guys will see a presentation on the details of our AR that goes back on our trends for the previous years, it goes back on our open balances. It will show you where we stand with that and what we're doing with that to be, what do we call it, politely aggressive about collecting it. Because, all right, we estimate roughly 95%, and I think the numbers are actually better than that in terms of people that pay their dues every year. Okay? Bear Valley, they budget based on they budget also based on 95%. They had 95.9% of their homeowners paid dues last year. Okay, so that factor there of about 4 to 5% is not uncommon. I don't have the detailed data from any of the other associations about what that is. Okay, but I will tell you this. Okay, we do have a bunch. We wrote off $82,000, okay, in November that we've been carrying on our books for years. All right? With the money we wrote off was based on homes that have been foreclosed on, okay, and dollars that we could never collect because the homes have been foreclosed on.
From long ago.
From long ago. Many of that 6-7 years ago we're talking about, okay? I'll also tell you that of our, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but these are going to be pretty close. Of our open receivable balance, okay, $450,000 of it is attributable to 47 homes. That's more than half, okay? Most of that goes back a long way. And it doesn't just represent dues, it represents dues plus interest and late fees. And you know what happens with that, right, is as they go on, right, they create a curve, right, that goes up. So all of a sudden, you may be going along, it's going like this, and all of a sudden they take off like that. That's at the point of the curve that we're on right now, okay? And that's why you guys have seen some of those numbers balloon up, okay? But the biggest percentage is attributable to 47 homes, okay? Those are people that have dues balances greater than $5,000. Okay, which obviously goes back a couple of years. So some are lots, not just houses. There's another group of 47. Just turned out that it just happened to be 47. Okay, that makes up that next chunk, you know, of dollars over $2,000. I think it was $2,000. I have to check specifically, but we've identified those. We've gone down to the county to verify who the homeowners are, that we have proper deeds, okay? And we will be sending out a letter to all of those past due homeowners. The first one will be a courtesy letter saying, hey, just letting you know, everybody else is paying their dues. You got to pay your dues too. We're going to be aggressively polite in that way. And if that doesn't work, we will send out demand letters. And the demand letters have to follow a very specific legal format, okay? And once we do that, if we don't get a response or we don't get a payment plan set up with those homes, we will file liens on those homes. The board has already talked with us. The board is in support of that. That is our power as a homeowners association to collect our dues. They are just like property taxes in that effect. So just hold on just a second. I'll come back. So, okay. So the board can negotiate payment plans and wants to. I mean, we don't want to foreclose on any homes, but that's really the only power we have to encourage people to make payments if they're not making payments. Okay? And the goal, what we're trying to do, all the stuff in the AR that goes back years, right, we've already weathered that part, right? We don't need the cash from that to meet our budget this year. Be great to get it. If we get it sometime down the road, or we get it when they sell their home, great, we got it. You know, we can wait on that. What we really want to do is make sure we're getting the money people owe this year, because we need that money to fund the budget for this year. Okay? So, as it relates to receivables, super important. We'll cover a lot more details at the next board meeting, and it has been getting a lot of attention, you know, from me, and it is one of, actually, to be quite honest with you, it is my top priority right now. Okay? Yes, sir.
In terms of demand letters and things like that, it would appear that in the past, the board was not particularly diligent about sending those demand letters out and putting liens on property. So my question relates to the association that I came from. We had an ironclad schedule, 30, 60, 90 days, bring lien, boom, and you might wait 2 or 3 years to collect the money, but when the house got sold, that money would be back. Does this association have in place now that kind of a firm schedule that automatically goes into?
Right. We have a schedule, but it has not been firm and followed the way you're describing. That's what we are doing. That is what we are working on and putting in place to execute on right now. Because you're right, that needs to happen. That is an obligation that we have to the homeowners and as outlined in our governing docs, to follow that collection policy.
Responsibility of the board.
Ultimately, it's yes. It is ultimately the responsibility of the board, and they take that very seriously. We've been gathering the information so that we can put this piece in place. Yeah, it has not been being done consistently for the last several years. Okay, and one more comment. Part of that, okay, was that when home prices were depressed, there was a rationalization. Why would we want to file a lien on a home that we couldn't collect any money on and go through the expense and trouble of that? Okay, that was a rationalization. We have the current board has a different perception of that. I have a different perception of that. I think it's important that people know that we're serious and we're going to follow the steps, you know, as outlined to protect all the other homeowners that are paying their dues.
As I said, ironclad procedure that you put into place, it don't matter.
Yep.
Or whatever.
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
The main reason that a lot of us are having this law is because when the banks take over the property, they don't have to pay the association. They don't have to pay the homeowner's previous balance. Okay, if they're the first mortgage holder. Okay? But once the bank takes ownership of the home, they have to pay dues to the association from then on. Now, there's a second part. If we are subordinate only to the first mortgage, okay, which means, okay, that as long as we get in place first, okay, anybody that forecloses on that property
other than the first mortgage holder, would be required to pay us off before they got any part of it. Yeah, there was a period of time, there was a period of time where there were a lot of foreclosures, housing prices were way depressed. It was very difficult, and not just our association, guys. I mean, this was a problem across the entire country. Okay, it really was. Yeah, Marie.
That's Bob's question. In your annual packet, our delinquent and lien policy
Yes.
is included in the annual packet.
But if it's not enforced, it's meaningless.
And we started this last year with implementing this.
Yeah.
We're doing.
Yeah.
Another problem we have is we have some staff changes in our administration, which put us behind.
Yeah.
When we were down employees, they had the regular, information done.
I'm not complaining about the past, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
we have something going forward.
Absolutely. That's why it is honestly my number one top priority. Number one top priority. I guess we have everybody here pays their dues, otherwise they wouldn't be clapping, right? Okay. All right. Oh, just a second. So we wrapped up this part. I am happy to stay and answer any other questions that people have or want to talk about. But I think we've reached the end of our scheduled time. Okay. Okay. Thank you everybody for coming out. Really appreciate it.